Every theater kid as a parent's dream came true the other day. I got asked what the most interesting number was by Oliver. It was like opportunity meets preparedness
What?
meets luck. 525,600 minutes. I was so ready.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. I thought you meant like your favorite number from a show.
Oh my God.
Okay, so your favorite like numerical number.
Numerical number that I found the most interesting. And I was like, whoa, I'm ready for this. And I just belted it out. I was so ready.
Oh, that is hilarious.
And then I just jammed out to it. I was like, you have to hear this song, Oliver. You have to hear this song.
I probably would have been like, oh, you mean, okay, so like from what show? Like Wicked?
You started tap dancing.
Yeah. I'd have been like, it's definitely Defying Gravity, but like Cynthia Erivo's version. Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Like, what number is that? I don't... That's hilarious. No, it was so great. It was so great. I was just like, this is such a dream come true question.
Oh my gosh, that is. Could you write that number out if you needed to?
I could write that number out.
I'm trying to write it out right now.
525,600.
Oh yeah, that's easy. 3, 2.
Hi, Dee.
Hi, Dee.
Any updates with you?
Living the London dream, and we've had our first like 2 days of sunny weather. Did you know what I found out is that in a whole year in London, there are only on average 43 days of sun in a year.
You're kidding.
No, I read that. 43 days out of 365 days. There's only 40.
Is this affecting like any kind of seasonal depression for you? Because I feel like I would be so depressed.
The thing is, though, is that like I am that kind of person that like loves rain. I love like
you love a gloomy day.
Yeah, because then like also it doesn't provide me guilt if I like decide I don't want to do anything that day.
That's fair. Yes, at the end of every summer. That's so funny you say that. At the end of every summer, I always say to people, they're like, "Oh, I'm so sad summer's over." I'm like, I'm not. I'm kind of over this because the sun is pressure for me to get outside and like be outside. And I'm not an outdoorsy person,
either.
but it's like this pressure to get out there. Yeah. So I'm like, I'm really ready to hibernate.
Yeah, and so now knowing that there's only 43 days, I'm like, oh God, the sun's out. I gotta get out.
Gotta go outside. Bring a little reflector with you.
But then you always like with UK weather, you like always have to bring a freaking umbrella because you never know if it's gonna like start raining. It's wild. But yeah, 43 days of sun in a whole year.
Ow.
But honestly, like I'm here for it because my house looks clean, my rooms looks clean, because then I'm just like,
it's a spring clean every day.
Yeah. Well, my God, we're recording on the first day of spring.
Oh my gosh, that's right.
Happy spring.
Wow. Happy spring and happy sunshine.
All right, shall we do it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Before we start every episode, we like to share a vintage cocktail from my grandpa's little black book. All his own recipes from his days of owning a bar in Detroit in the 1940s.
So what is our drink today from your grandpa's little black book?
Today's drink from grandpa's little black book is actually called the Bronx. It is a ½ ounce of gin, 1/4 ounce of French vermouth, 1/4 ounce of Italian vermouth, 1 ounce of orange juice, and 1 dash of orange liqueur. You put that in a mixer and strain it to a glass, and it's so good.
All right. Are we ready to start the episode?
Let's do it. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Forensic Files Duo podcast, where we recap, review, and provide updates on the cases featured on the true crime TV show Forensic Files. I'm Drew, and I knew nothing about true crime until we started this podcast.
And I'm Danielle, and true crime practically raised me.
If you're listening to us for the first time and want to hear more about our friendship and how we became the forensics duo many moons ago, head over to episode 1 for the whole backstory.
But to summarize, our high school had a forensics team, and we competed in the duo category. It had absolutely nothing to do with science in the slightest. And as a duo, 2 people perform a scene from a play. You can't look at each other, touch each other, or use props outside of chairs or stools. Then you take it to competitions and compete against other schools.
But after years of the rest of the world assuming we were little Nancy Drews solving crime on this forensics team, we say, who's better qualified for this podcast?
Now for our regular disclaimer, we understand that we will be discussing a lot of sensitive topics, so although we may laugh at times, please remember we are laughing at ourselves and ourselves only. We are not making light of what the victims and their families have gone through and may continue to be going through.
And in an effort to use the public's overall interest in the show Forensic Files and leverage the power of digital media, once the episode coverage is over, we will highlight a missing persons case that's currently featured on the Black and Missing Foundation's website.
Today's episode is listed on Wikipedia as Season 14, Episode 16, called Gone Ballistic, and it aired on April 8th, 2011. And trigger warnings for this episode: we will discuss self-exiting, so please, if you are struggling with thoughts of harming yourself, call or text 988 or just Google 988 and you can chat with someone right there.
This case takes us to Grand Junction, Colorado in the year 2008. And funny story is, actually, I have been there.
That's crazy.
It's finding, I know, these random places in the past 2 episodes.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I've been there. But I actually have an ex from Grand Junction, and I remember I went to visit his family there, and when I tell you, the elevation is real.
You have that elevation sickness?
Yeah, no, I mean, I couldn't even go up the stairs in his parents' house without feeling completely out of breath. It was wild. It was wild. Anyways, Danielle, do you have any other good info on this place at this time?
Well, like usual, I have never heard of it. And while researching Grand Junction, things get a little weird. I found myself down a very strange rabbit hole about an urban legend.
Ooh, I love urban legends.
Okay, so before I get to that, Google tells me that in the early 2000s, Grand Junction, Colorado was known as a mix of small town and big city vibes, with a focus on outdoor activities, but also somewhat sleepy atmosphere in the more suburban areas. Sounds like this place is having a bit of an identity crisis. It also had a reputation for being a place with a strong drug scene, and this is where the local urban legend comes in. It's about a group called Chicken Whackers.
What?
So I got most of my info from judgmentcallpodcast.com. So to break it down very quickly, the urban legend of the Chicken Whackers in Grand Junction, Colorado is a bizarre and eerie local tale. According to the story, a group of mysterious figures, sometimes described as deranged farmers or ghostly butchers, roam the outskirts of town at night, seeking out chickens to whack with a sinister satanic intent.
Oh my God.
So some versions claim they are former workers from old poultry farms, cursed to wander forever after a tragic accident. Others say that they're merely pranksters whose antics turned into something more sinister over time, linking this group to Satanism, drugs, black magic, etc. Reports of strange noises, mutilated fowl, or shadowy figures lurking in rural areas have fueled the legend, making it a favorite among those who love a good creepy tale. This urban legend lacks verifiable evidence to support its claims, though, and the origins of the legend are unclear, with no definitive historical records pinpointing its inception. Some discussions suggest that the term chicken whackers may have started as a humorous colloquialism before evolving into something more sinister and often used to explain strange, unexplainable events. The chicken whackers phenomenon has led to a 15% increase in false reports of ritualistic animal abuse in Western Colorado since 2020, straining law enforcement resources.
Honestly, some of these updates of these cities is actually wild. This one takes the cherry on the top of the cake.
Yeah, this one was probably the funniest one. I'm like, what?
That is crazy. My brain instantly went to satanic rituals of sacrificing live animals.
Yeah, exactly. I literally had to stop myself from continuing down this hole because there's things on Reddit. There's this podcast that's out there. I never got to listen to it. I didn't have time. I was going down this rabbit hole and I was like, I had to pull myself out because I was like, I am wasting actual time in my life on
focusing on the chicken whackers.
I was like, back to the episode, Danielle. It's not about chicken whackers. Back to the episode. So we start this episode with a messy up next narration from Peter, and I'm starting to realize that these more modern episodes are just a lot of B-roll. There's a lot less reenactments and just a lot more random B-roll footage. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I am being a bit unfair to say this because I'm not sure which one I would prefer.
I know.
I miss the reenactments a little.
Me either.
But then I shit on the reenactments all the time.
Every time I'm like, oh, God.
I feel a little bit unfair.
I'm right there with you. While these shots are taking us on a journey, we're hearing about a real estate developer who lives in fear for his life while we see construction trucks. We learn that somebody wanted this guy dead. While we're seeing shots of a beautiful mountain town, then bam, a lot of blood is on the floor. Then a computer that will apparently expose dark secrets then a bullet in dirt. I mean, this just made me extremely dizzy.
It was fast.
Yeah.
So after the whiplash of an opening, the episode slows down a bit to tell us that in western Colorado, a successful land developer, Alan Helmick, and his wife Miriam were going through difficult times. Professionally, Alan's real estate ventures weren't what they once were.
And then someone had recently tried to take Alan's life, which I feel like is something you might want to lead with, you know? Finances can be hard from time to time, but a murder attempt should definitely be what we lead with next time.
We hear about this murder attempt and see reenactment Alan waiting in a parking lot, while we're told Miriam is in the store shopping. Then we see smoke coming out of the back end of his car. It was right in the middle of the parking lot in broad daylight. Someone had placed a lit fuse in the gas tank. I have so many questions, but will I get any of them answered? Definitely not on this episode.
Fortunately, Alan saw the smoke and got out in time. We meet co-prosecutor Richard Tuttle, who tells us that Alan got lucky and for whatever reason, the conditions weren't right to cause an explosion, so luckily the car did not explode. Unfortunately, the parking lot had no surveillance cameras. We see what looks like a small town version of downtown, so I'm guessing it wasn't as common in the less commercial areas, but because of that, it was impossible to tell who had planted the device.
But I need to know more. Like, isn't this something you have to do pretty quickly? Did he not see anyone open his gas tank and insert a lit wick into his gas tank? I'm just like, I'm having a hard time being like, how, what, huh?
Right.
Like, this seems like it had to happen really fast. So I'm just like, I have so many questions. I have so many questions. Like, can this just chill in your gas tank for a while until something like catastrophic happens? Like, the car looks older, and I'm pretty sure those older cars, don't they have like the unscrew or the screwable gas tanks? Do you remember those?
Yeah.
It's not like a pop and, you know, it's you got to unscrew the top and the cap and everything. So it isn't exactly going to be like a quiet experience to open up a gas tank.
Wait, I thought that she put it in the tailpipe.
No.
It was in the gas tank?
Yes, and the gas tank is like in the middle of the car, I guess, of the back of the car.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And I guess because it was completely full or it had to have been empty, that's why it didn't go off. I heard it in one of the podcasts. It's one or the other. Like, your tank either has to be completely empty or completely full for it to actually explode the car.
Got it.
And because it was completely full, it just smoked.
Right.
Is
Got
what
it.
I
Okay.
think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what happened.
Okay.
But it's just I have so many questions.
Now we see my favorite, a black and white scene, but to not make this even better, it's of a cassette tape playing. Young ones, do we all know what a cassette tape is?
I am not going to Google this to explain this. But also, if you're too young to know what a cassette tape is, you might not want to be listening to this podcast. You might want to go find a safe adult and say, whoops, I found something playing I shouldn't be listening to.
What we are hearing is audio from Alan's interview and with investigators as to any potential suspects that have a problem with him. To my shock, Alan doesn't even hesitate and says,
"There are two people that have had a problem with me."
This sounds like major drama. I mean, we quickly meet journalist Paul Shockley, very fitting for his last name because he looks completely shocked to even having to be a part of this TV show. And then we meet lead prosecutor Tammy Feltz, who is giving me LVP from Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. I mean,
yeah,
she was like, her hair is done up, like she looks very glammed up. And for those of you who don't know who LVP is, do your homework. We're moving very quick on this episode, no time to waste. Tammy is wondering if a business deal went bad, if there was some sale of property that caused someone to be angry with Alan. But then, 6 weeks later, Alan misses a scheduled lunch date with his wife.
We see reenactment Miriam walk in the door, and the camera does like a POV type shot walking through their house into what looks like a home office, but I read elsewhere he was found in his kitchen. Regardless, I don't know why they said office. Every other source says this all happened in the kitchen, which is important. So regardless, we see reenactment Alan on the floor in a huge pool of blood. That's when we hear the real Miriam's 911 call to the police.
What's the problem? Tell me exactly what happened.
He was on the floor. It looks like somebody came in and robbed him.
Okay, Drew, true crime quiz time.
Oh, we haven't done one of these in a long time.
What part of Miriam's call that we just heard is a red flag to investigators? I'll play it again.
What's the problem? Tell me exactly what happened.
He was on the floor. It looks like somebody came in and robbed him.
Here's the question again. What part of Miriam's call that we just heard is a red flag to investigators?
It looks like someone robbed us.
Yes.
Am I right?
Good job. I'm so proud of you.
Okay, well, I originally was going to say that he's on the floor dead, but then I was like, wait, no, that's the
No, you're
obvious.
right. You're right. That's the second part, but you're right.
Oh, okay.
Both of those.
Look at me.
Look at you. We got to change the intro because now you're no longer a true crime baby.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've seen this come up a lot in these cases that include their 911 calls. And when the guilty party is making that call and then they provide an explanation to investigators, it is a common tactic used to steer the narrative away from them. But I can see a totally innocent person doing this as well, because I mean, I could see myself even doing something like that in like a state of panic and my mind like running through a million scenarios and trying to make something logical, like connect dots. You know, I could see my mind doing that. Obviously, I don't know how I would react, but this can't be used against her unless it is proven otherwise. So, but then you're right. On the second part is that she also immediately says that he's dead. And I don't know, I'm probably just overthinking this, but wouldn't you if you found a loved one on the floor? You're not going to immediately go to that. That's hard for our brains to like to get to. At first, you're going to hold on to that hope that something's wrong, that he's unconscious, he's not breathing, he's not this, he's not answering me, he's stiff, he's cold, I don't know, I don't know, so he's hurt really bad. Like, I feel like that is where you go to if it's someone you really love and you don't want them to be dead. It would make more sense to say something like, he's not breathing, I think he's dead.
Right. Especially if you just like walked in and
walked
saw
in
him.
the door. Yeah.
Like, you don't automatically know that he's dead.
Right, exactly. But then it hit me too. If it is a robbery, like her mind immediately went to, how does she know that the person who robbed them isn't still in the house?
Right. I would leave.
You would leave.
Yeah.
Exactly. You'd be scared. You would leave. It's suspicious. It's suspicious because then she says in all these interviews later, like, I just knelt down to him and held his hand. And I was like, if I thought someone robbed me, I don't know when this happened. Like, I'm getting the fuck out of there. Like, I'm going to call from my safe neighbor's house or something.
Right. Like, I would not stay in the frickin' house.
Right.
That's like, you know, like in scary movies when the girl runs up the stairs instead of like
out the door.
Fucking door.
Yep.
Yeah. When police and paramedics arrived, they pronounced Alan Helmick dead at the scene. And I think we're seeing actual crime scene photos now. I mean, they really nailed the set for the reenactment, so I didn't even notice this at first, but there's a lot of blood, and it shows that he had been shot once in the back of his head.
So this part stood out to me instantly because if a robber was only there for things, but then panicked when he saw Alan and shot him in, let's say, a horrible split-second decision, I could see that being a plausible explanation. But what I don't see happening is like the robber spotting Alan, then quietly approaching him to get close enough to shoot Alan without ever turning around to this robber, you know, whose intent should only be to rob their house. Like, how does he not hear someone coming up behind him? And why would the robber quietly approach to not cause him to turn around and then shoot him? Like, the justification for an execution style murder doesn't match a robbery gone wrong kind of scenario here.
Yeah.
Because walking up that close is personal, and it tells me that Alan knew this person and knew they were in the house. And this was the part that I was talking about, the kitchen, and why it's important to know that he was actually found in the kitchen. I found in other sources that robbers don't usually waste time in kitchens. They want to be in and out as quickly as possible, so they go to bedrooms for jewelry, cash, firearms, or offices for laptops and things like that.
But I'm wondering, like, why would they make this be like such a specific thing to not get right? Or like they would specifically make it be in a completely different room. I don't know. That to me is a little bit sketch.
It just seems like lazy. It just seems like lazy work.
Yeah. Well, a shell casing from a .25 caliber handgun was next to the body, but no weapon was present, so suicide was immediately eliminated. Also, the location of where the injury was on the back of the head was not feasible to be suicide. Alan's son-in-law learned of the murder when he arrived at the scene, and we just see this poor man collapse. His grief was felt through that screen. His daughter is here to tell us.
It's terrible for someone to get shot because this is a person that people loved and respected, and he loved his family, and he tried to make his life better, and he loved people around him.
At first it looked like a robbery was a possible motive, but then several drawers were pulled out and the jewelry box was empty, but there was no forced entry. So that theory was quickly ruled out, and things like laptops just out in the open weren't taken, or firearms in the home. In so many ways, it was just not consistent with other burglary cases. The rest of the house was not ransacked, just the kitchen. So they're starting to wonder if this is a staged robbery. And since Miriam Helmick found the body, she was automatically considered a suspect.
She willingly agreed to take a gunshot residue test, and I can't actually remember if we've covered gunshot residue, but they break it down very simply here. Anyone who fires a gun usually comes into contact with the gases discharged when the bullet is fired. Detectives swabbed Miriam's hands, arms, and face, but no gunshot residue was detected. In other sources, you find out that she was claiming to have given Bob chest compressions, but she said she couldn't give mouth to mouth because there was too much blood. And I just thought, couldn't she have come into contact with gunshot residue just from touching his body like this? I'm not sure. I'm not completely sure on that. But also, like, I watched the interview again and went back, and you can see the outfit that she found his body. And I'm like, where's the blood then? Like, there's nothing on her clothes. There was nothing on her pants.
Right.
I don't know how she was able to stay away from all that. So I don't know if I buy that she was giving him any chest compressions.
I'm pretty sure that the gunshot residue thing came into play with that one episode where I kept saying Ballistic, you know, where the little kid was in the gun.
Yeah,
Trey
Cooley.
Cooley.
Yeah.
I think they did. They covered that. The videos of her getting swabbed for the gun residue is wild. I didn't even know that this was a thing, really. Investigators now wondered who wanted Alan Helmick dead and why. Alan and Miriam Helmick had been married for about 2 years. It was the second marriage for both. Alan and Miriam were known as being inseparable. Friends of theirs said that they were always together. Miriam was convinced that Alan's murder and the attempted car bombing 6 weeks earlier were both related.
Then, a week after Alan's funeral, Miriam found a greeting card under her front doormat. It was addressed to the grieving widow.
Okay, no. It was not addressed to the grieving widow. Now, being a professional English tutor, surprising or not, I instantly saw this and this was spelled incorrectly. The letter actually read Greving. If we're doing the pronunciation correctly, the Greving widow, because there is no I.
No, there is not.
I instantly was like, you really are setting yourself up. Or it's like she was like doing it in a way to make it seem like she was. Yeah, so she's like an older lady that should clearly know that this is going to be pronounced Greving. Like, you know, like in those ransom letters, how like they purposely misspell things, but it's definitely.
Yeah, but I'm just like, who are you trying to portray here? Like,
also,
you're gonna try to find someone who doesn't know how to spell? Like,
but also, like, Peter, you shouldn't even be saying the grieving widow. Like, you should be saying the Greving widow.
Greving widow.
Yeah.
She opened the card and it read, "Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result." And like, honestly, this is something I say to myself multiple times a week as I try to get a hang of motherhood. Then it also said that Alan was first, you're next, run, run, run. Miriam essentially physically collapses, and many words in the message were misspelled, including Alan's name and Greving.
Yeah.
There was no postmark on the envelope either, which meant it had been hand delivered.
Okay. This leads me to a very embarrassing story, actually, that for the first... I don't know if I actually ever told you this, but for the first 16 years of my life, I was spelling my middle name wrong.
All the way to 16?
Yep. On every single piece of paper, on our confirmation letter, like everything, I was spelling it wrong. So my name is Drew Alan Reese. I was spelling it as my middle name, Alan. I put that on everything. But it wasn't actually until I got my driver's license when my mom corrected me and she saw me like filling in the paperwork, what's going to go on your license. And she's like, "Why are you spelling your middle name that way?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "You're spelling it wrong." And I was like, "No,
oh my God.
It's Alan. And she's like, "No, Drew, it's Allen." She was like, "How long have you been spelling your middle name wrong?" And I was like, I was like, I guess 16 years because I'm 16 years old and I've been spelling my middle name wrong every day. Like in high school, I was spelling it Alan, like on everything, even like official documents. I'm wondering like if there's a way to even go back and look at how many documents are like incorrectly spelled.
If your mom has like a box of like some of your like, this is my first time writing forms, and it's like you writing your full name and it's Alan.
I didn't know that there were two spellings to Alan. I just thought it was always A-L-A-N.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so it's A-L-L-E-N. And Miriam, thank you for triggering me. Miriam is convinced that the killer is now out to get her. The simple block lettering made handwriting analysis impossible. There were no fingerprints on the envelope or the letter. The envelope wasn't sealed, so there was no saliva on the envelope flap and no DNA to actually recover. I wish it was sealed because forensics obviously would have been all up on that saliva, and the barcode on the back of the card was actually missing. It had been cut out, as if somebody knew we might want to trace that greeting card and find out where it came from.
But investigators contacted the company that made that card and learned it was sold in 3 different stores in the area. So not off the hook yet. The most recent sale happened just 4 days before the card was delivered. It was a cash purchase at a store 13 miles from the Helmick's house. Detectives asked to see the store surveillance tapes.
Lo and behold, who's purchasing the greeting card? It's Miriam Helmick.
I knew it. I felt like it was Miriam setting this up, but I bet you she is probably wanting money. And they say, based on her haircut, her glasses, the way that she walked, her body shaped, that there is no doubt in our mind that it was Miriam Helmick. But I'm thinking, dang, for 2008, this quality is actually horrible.
It was horrible. I was like, I don't see Miriam. Like, I'm not sure that's Miriam. Like,
but like, if you had to, like, if I was to say the word, the name Miriam, I feel like she kind of definitely does
she fits Miriam. She's a Miriam.
Yeah, she's a Miriam. Now we have like the Karen aspect. Like,
yeah, she's a Miriam.
I think we need to start implementing the Miriam.
The Miriam.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
yeah.
I couldn't agree more. So Miriam was confronted with the surveillance image, and she then admitted to placing the card at her own house. Her explanation was to get law enforcement to refocus on the investigation and be more active. Now suspicious, investigators searched Miriam and Alan's computer hard drives for possible clues.
They had 2 distinct computers side by side. Alan used one, Miriam used the other. It's a little funny to hear someone in 2011 explain to people how we tend to be very intimate with our computers.
They will ask it questions through Google that they would not ask another human being.
And it's so ironic because we were just talking about AI therapy. It was even on the radio last week, and a guy said that he would be more honest with an AI therapist than a human therapist, and made some solid points about how AI can't forget or cut corners or project their personal biases. So it's interesting, I have to admit. I find it very, very interesting.
I mean, listen, I would be lying to you if I haven't been like, I can't really afford a therapy session this week, so I'm going to ChatGPT. It's honestly crazy because there's some like responses that like I have gotten better from ChatGPT and like giving me advice, which it just sounds so crazy that I'm even saying this.
No, and honestly, like you read me some of the responses and I was like, wow,
Yeah.
that's better advice than I think I could even give you, like as a human
Yeah,
being.
because now I have to be careful because like my therapy that I'm paying for, I'm like, well, Would ChatGPT say this in a better way? Well, investigators soon learned that Miriam had been searching the internet for all sorts of interesting information, especially about overdosing on the prescription drugs Alan had been taking. That recovered approximately 180 online medical searches for things such as Viagra overdose,
Ambien overdose.
Lisinopril overdose,
Combination of those drugs mixed together.
pain-killing overdoses. They think she was looking at various ways to kill Alan because investigators also learned that Miriam would benefit handsomely as a result of Alan's death.
So we're told that Alan's real estate holdings were worth millions, but quite a few things are left out here. Miriam and Alan signed a prenup. She wasn't entitled to anything he made before their marriage. And remember, they'd only been married for a couple of years. Well, during this time, Alan is having these mysterious illnesses, and in order for him to rest, Miriam takes his cell phone and ultimately isolates him. His kids can't get a hold of him. She's answering his phone. She's not passing on their messages. Alan is also in the process of selling a huge portion of his business, like having a buyout type of deal. And the two had ironically taken out life insurance policies on one another. And little Miss apparently called the company and asked if Alan needs to know if she ups the policy. This is all found in like podcasts that I'm going to link in the show notes. Then Alan's bank is trying to get a hold of him because he's defaulted on loans. Remember in the beginning when he claimed he was having disputes with a bank about fraudulent loans? Yeah, well, not only did Miriam take out loans he was defaulting on, She was also caught writing checks. The bank was trying to get a hold of Alan and even contacted his daughter. And his daughter was also being blocked from communicating with him. But she finally told Miriam why it was so important to discuss directly with Alan. And she told him that the bank needed to talk to him. So Miriam knew for sure that everyone else was becoming aware and that she was about to be exposed.
Whoa. Why do they leave all this out?
I don't know, because it gives us so much more context. It's enraging. This episode made me do so much work.
His daughter is here to confirm.
Yes, the oldest motive in the world.
There was only one problem. Investigators had no proof Miriam shot and killed her husband. Investigators now believe that Alan Helmick might have been murdered not by an angry business associate, but by his second wife, Miriam.
Then that's when we finally get some backstory on Miriam, but not enough to fit into a 26-minute television segment. When police checked her background, they discovered something suspicious.
Just a little something. 6 years earlier, Miriam's first husband, Jack Giles, shot himself to death while he was sleeping next to her.
Anytime you hear that a woman has more than one husband die of a gunshot wound to the head, you get concerned.
Well, no shit. Colorado investigators soon discovered something odd about this suicide. For one thing, it was Miriam's half-brother, a local policeman, who was first on the scene and declared the death a suicide. This is despite the fact that Jack Giles apparently killed himself with his right hand, and a friend of his is here to say that Jack couldn't do anything with his right hand.
But I did hear in another source, it was actually a 2020 episode that covered this case from Miriam and Jack's son, who was interviewed on that episode. He said the only reason his father learned to write with his left hand was due to him injuring his right hand when he was young. So that's when he taught himself how to use his left. So he was technically ambidextrous.
In true red flag fashion, Miriam's explanation as to why Jack committed suicide kept changing. She said that he was very depressed because of her daughter Amy, who had supposedly overdosed. But now Alan's daughter says that Miriam often changed the story regarding the circumstances of her daughter's death, and at one point it was an overdose once, and one time it was some sort of physical ailment.
In every single source that I have tirelessly found, they all state that they don't have any real answers on this. But in a really great podcast on this case, it's reported that Miriam and Jack's daughter was a great student. She was the apple of Jack's eye. And she didn't have a history of drug use. So it's all just so weird. It's so weird.
That's weird. Records show Miriam was the beneficiary of Jack Giles' $100,000 life insurance policy. She apparently gets some insurance settlement and very quickly is back living her best life.
Okay, I'm going to throw this info in right here because to include all of these details at the end will just take forever. So, records also show that Jack left Miriam with a lot of debt. He didn't pay taxes, he had defaulted on loans, and he had a huge credit card balance. So, whether it was Jack's doing or Miriam's doing, we're not 100% sure, but essentially she used that insurance policy money and the profits from selling their home to pay off all sorts of debts. Then she moved to Florida because running to Florida is basically chapter 1 and how to be a criminal for like losers. So anyways, so she moves there and she moves in with her dad, Frank, and her stepmother, Frankie.
What?
Her dad's Frank and her stepmom is Frankie.
Oh my God.
So Frank just had heart surgery and Frankie, she was in the process of cancer treatments.
Oh my God.
So they were really going through it. While there, she said she would just take over their bills.
Red flag, red flag.
It's raining red flags.
Red flag.
So at this point, while living with them, she tells them she is so set from the insurance policy money and Jack's 401k that she doesn't even need to work. So she buys another house, then furnishes it all in cash. But whatever money she had, she dried it up fast, and then she had to sell the house and move into a rented room. Soon after that, her father gets a call from the bank that his account was overdrawn by $10,000. They showed footage from the bank and from the bank security cameras and asked if it was his wife who made the large withdrawal. And he said, no, that is my daughter.
Oh my God.
He found out there were checks made out to a dancewear company that Miriam just cashed herself.
Dancewear company?
She made up a dance company and cashed them herself.
No way.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going, keep going, keep going.
She drained them of everything. When he calls to address this with her, she said she would come over that night to talk about it, but she never showed up. But what did show up was a legit fire on their back porch that was connected to their bedroom, and it was ruled to be arson. Yeah, she tried killing him. Her father went to look for her, and when they got to her rented room, she had packed up everything and was gone. She did eventually speak to them, and she said that she was going to work in Maryland and would one day explain everything. Everything would one day make sense. What she really did was move to Mobile, Alabama to live with her mother, stole a few thousand from her, and then ended up in Gulfport, Mississippi.
Miriam!
She is a disaster.
Jesus Christ.
So they estimate that she stole about $90,000 to $120,000 from her parents. Most of that was from her father. After this, in Gulfport, she got a job as a ballroom dance teacher.
What?
Yeah. Someone started stealing money from the studio, but they assumed it was a coworker who had just recently left that was to blame. A position then opened up to manage the dance studio in Colorado, and Miriam asked the owner, Barbara, for the position. Barbara agrees. She flies to Colorado to help Miriam get all set up, then returns to Gulfport. Miriam starts abusing her business credit card, and this is when Barbara realizes she needs to keep a very close eye on Miriam. That's when the forged checks start, and Barbara files a police complaint, but doesn't fire her because Barbara knows what's up, and she knew Mississippi wouldn't just spend money to go find Miriam on this bad check fraud situation, so she had to bring Miriam back to Gulfport. So badass Barb tells Miriam to come back into town to take some special dance classes. Miriam shows up and is arrested.
Oh my God, this is giving Real Housewives of Salt Lake City.
Yes, yes. So she gets out on bail, but is officially fired for stealing and for breaking her contract because she started dating one of her students, Alan Helmick. So this is where the story all comes together. Barbara sent all of this info to Alan and told Alan to run, but he couldn't be swayed. The charges ended up being dropped because Hurricane Katrina rolled in.
What?
And we can all understand why. Her case was no longer a priority. Hurricane Katrina devastated that town.
Right.
They dropped it. She got so freaking lucky. So while cleaning out a cottage behind the studio where Miriam lived while she was teaching there, Barbara found a bunch of altered bank statements with Miriam's dad's name on them, proving that she stole from her father. She didn't know what to do with this evidence until Miriam had the audacity to sue Barbara for holding her property. Which was these bank statements proving she was a criminal. So then Barbara's like, okay, bet. She countersues. And then Miriam's father tells Miriam that he's going to testify against her. So Miriam then drops the lawsuit. But Barbara doesn't drop it. And they ended up settling out of court. This woman is so much trouble. I'm just exhausted from reading and writing about her at this point, truly.
I actually am now so much more invested. And I don't know if it's because of the dance thing, because I know a lot of studios in New Orleans and Mobile, Alabama. But if she was dating one of her students, which would be Alan. That obviously would be a Fred Astaire ballroom dance studio or something like that. That's what that's giving me. But I need to find out. I'm so invested.
Yeah.
I'm so invested.
Crazy.
Okay, well, taking us back to what's happening in the episode. While trying to solve the murder of Miriam's second husband, Alan Helmick, investigators found a series of checks totaling $40,000 made out to Miriam. The checks were signed by Alan, but now police are pretty sure that they were forged. They actually believe that there were a lot more checks that she probably forged, but they tried to limit them to the checks that contained the strongest evidence against her. We see forensics document examiners and learned that they determined 10 checks were forgeries, although it was impossible to say conclusively that Miriam was the forger. And this is when I thought we'd get a breakdown of what a forensics document examiner does, but no, producers were like, this is such a messy case, this is a messy woman, and we're just not having it today.
And remember that attempted car bombing? Well, police now believe the car bombing was Miriam's work, which, surprise, surprise to no one. This episode tells us that she was conveniently away from the car inside the store when Alan found the lit wick sticking out of his gas tank. So this isn't exactly correct. It sort of, but not really. And listen, guys, I'm so tired. This episode made me work so hard to correct this shit. Okay, so to set the record straight, what actually happened is Miriam told Alan she had to use the bathroom, complaining of a stomach ache. And anyone with IBS can relate. Okay, this is fine. But he pulled into a parking lot for her to use one inside a store, or maybe there was a public one. We're not exactly sure. But what we do know is that Miriam just so conveniently also had to tie her shoe at the back of the car, then go into the bathroom.
But isn't, and in the reenactments, she's getting a grocery bag out of the trunk.
Yeah, it has her showing pulling stuff out of the trunk. So it's not exactly how it went down. She told Alan she had to tie her shoe, and she was back there. So then Alan sees the smoke, gets out of the car, and calls police. Miriam comes out. Police start questioning them. she told them that she had to use the bathroom again. And instead of going into the bathroom she had just come out of, she goes across a 4-lane road to a gas station and never comes out.
It's giving me Bridesmaids, like, look away, look away. She's just shitting in the fucking sink.
Okay, so when police went into the bathroom that she used, apparently, they smelled gasoline. And now...
She lit up the place.
You were having way too much fun with this.
Sorry, this is hilarious.
Her excuse, as of January 2025, is that Alan did pull the wick out and told her to throw it out. And then they realized the police might want to see that wick. So then he asked her to go get it back from the bathroom. So that's why the bathroom smelled like gasoline.
This story honestly gets crazier and crazier. Oh my God, I'm living for these updates.
Yeah. All right. So luckily investigators weren't buying it either.
To investigators, it reminded them of the car bombing scene in the hit film No Country for Old Men. The villain in that particular movie blows up a car using a homemade wick, and they wondered if Alan and Miriam had actually seen that movie. They checked their cable billing statements, and sure enough, they had rented that movie 4 days before this attempted car fire in Delta, Colorado. And throughout this episode, we hear police questioning Alan on whether they think Miriam did it or not, and he is so certain she would never. He said that he was worth to her more alive than dead. They tried tricking him by implying they saw only Miriam on the surveillance cameras, but he called their bluff. Miriam either got lucky that there were no cameras on that parking lot, or did she know?
Police had a wealth of circumstantial evidence.
The surveillance images of her buying the card,
The check forgeries.
the attempted car bombing.
And the computer searches.
If you put all of that together, it's very clear what happened in this case, but they still didn't have what was the murder weapon, a .25 caliber handgun. Alan's daughter told police her father did own a .25 caliber gun that was a family heirloom. Her little sister Christy actually recalled seeing the gun that they believed was used in the murder. She saw it in her father's dresser drawer under the socks while she was putting away laundry for him. Well, that gun was now missing from the home's inventory.
They say it would have pointed the finger at Miriam Helmick as the person who would have access to it and easy access to it. But didn't they say that the son was also living with them too? So I'm not super sure about that. Just makes me have more questions.
Every time you thought you knew everything, something else would come up with her.
No truer words have ever been stated about this woman. They need to throw this gun away.
This whole family, man, because then Alan's daughter, Wendy, tells us that the gun had been fired in a domestic dispute involving her grandparents.
My grandfather went a little crazy and tried to shoot my grandmother in their front lawn one day.
Wendy, honey, that's not a little crazy. That's homicidal, sweetie. This family needs so much therapy, or maybe ChatGPT if that was around then. A neighbor saw what was happening and intervened. He jumped on Wendy's grandfather and the gun went off. Turns out it actually went into the lawn. The neighbor who intervened in the shooting incident 20 years earlier was actually still alive, still living in the same place, and still remembers it vividly. He was even able to tell the police where he believed it had entered the lawn.
We now see forensic analysis searching for the bullet that had been buried for almost 20 years now. They went out there with metal detectors, and can you believe this? They were able to locate the bullet.
That is crazy. When that part played, I was like, what? A bullet that had been fired in 1989 can now be used to possibly solve a murder in 2008. That's wild.
Unfortunately, though, after 2 decades in the ground, it had started to corrode, but it bore marks that are consistent with damage caused by striking sand or small stone particles. And the bullet that killed Alan Helmick was also damaged as a result of impact, and the lands and grooves from both bullets were still visible.
Investigators compared those markings to see if both bullets came from the same weapon, and the firearms examiner we meet here, Sam Marceau, was also able to determine that the bullet recovered from the yard corresponded with the bullet from the victim in a number of land and groove impressions and their widths.
I was able to determine also that the fired bullet from the yard was a right-hand twist. My result was that the two bullets could have been fired by the same firearm.
Bulletistics.
I love it. Okay, for those who don't know, like I didn't, a right-hand twist in a rifle barrel refers to the direction of the spiral grooves that impart spin to the bullet, causing it to drift slightly to the right during flight, a phenomenon known as spin drift. Thank you, Google. Now, a quick true crime class time. In a previous episode, we spoke about forensics, ballistics. Everything in me wants to say balladistics now. So in that previous episode, we discussed how it's currently being challenged for its reliability and accuracy. But it's important to note that while forensics ballistics can be used to compare bullets and cartridge cases to determine if they came from the same type of gun, it's not a perfect science, and it relies on probability, not certainty. Examiners use microscopes to compare markings on bullets and cartridge cases, but studies have shown that this method has limitations and can be flawed, and examiners' interpretations of markings can vary, leading to inconsistent results. Guns that are consecutively manufactured have similar markings, potentially leading to a false positive match. And lastly, there are no universally accepted standards for how many matching points are needed to declare a match. Studies show that examiners cannot reliably determine whether bullets or cartridges were fired by a particular gun. The most they can do is narrow it down to a type of gun. So with that in mind, I'm kind of curious what everyone will think about the evidence against Miriam that we are about to break down, and see if you as a juror member would convict beyond any reasonable doubt. Remember, that's the basis. You have to convict beyond any reasonable doubt. So, I mean, if this woman ever wanted a real shot at appealing her case, I may have just given it to her. Whoops. But, I mean, facts are facts. Science is real, and some things just aren't as crystal clear. And it's important that we understand that when it's presented to a jury regarding the fate of someone's life.
So here is the Forensic Files Roundup.
The ballistics, along with the circumstantial evidence, was more than enough to charge Miriam Helmick with murder.
Prosecutors believe Miriam was systematically stealing money from Alan's business accounts, and that, at some point, Alan found out about it.
Thinking that their relationship was soon to end, prosecutors believe Miriam tried to kill Alan, first by giving him an overdose of his prescription medicine.
When that didn't work, prosecutors believe Miriam placed a lighted wick in the gas tank of the car while Alan waited for her in a shopping center parking lot.
Fortunately, that attempt failed miserably.
Prosecutors believe Miriam knew about the family heirloom .25 caliber pistol Alan kept in his sock drawer.
And then when the couple was alone, Miriam waited until Alan was in his office, which we now know isn't true because every other single source says it was in the kitchen. But moving on.
She walked up behind him and fired a single shot.
She showered, changed her clothes, ran her errands, and drove to the Chinese restaurant in order to set up her alibi.
She left a message on Alan's voicemail asking where he was.
No one knows where she disposed of the murder weapon or her clothes, but we assume she did so on her way to or from the Chinese restaurant.
It's more likely she disposed of them all over town because Forensic Files isn't accounting for the fact that she ran multiple errands all over town setting up an alibi.
When Miriam returned home, she called 911 saying she had just found Alan's body in a pool of blood.
After Alan's funeral, Miriam purchased the greeting card and used it to make it appear that she too was a potential target.
She didn't realize the store surveillance cameras would capture the purchase.
Oh, it was clear as day, Miriam.
During her trial, Miriam took the stand in her own defense. Trial watchers said her performance did more harm than good. In speaking with the jury, when asked, what was your impression of her? About 6 people actually answered together and said, liar. It only took them about 5 hours to find Miriam Helmick guilty of first-degree murder.
I actually heard that they were all in agreement on the murder charges, but it was the bank fraud and forgery charges that they took a little bit more time on to discuss and ensure that they were understanding the laws in comparison to the evidence they were provided. But they were all unanimous on the murder charge.
Miriam Helmick was sentenced to life in prison plus 108 years. Bitch, you ain't getting out.
You, Miriam, got what you deserved.
Get her, Wendy. Sergeant Henry Stovall closes out the episode with this fabulous quote.
The bullet from 1989, the likelihood of us finding that one bullet that allows us to compare it to that one gun that we can't find is the work that was done on that is amazing.
But, like, how reliable is that part of the evidence now knowing what we actually know? Do we have any updates or any other corrections than what you've actually already provided? I bet you do.
Oh, my God. I'm about to talk a lot. Okay. So, oddly enough, this case was just on 2020 this past January. So 15 years after she was sentenced, and she's interviewed for the first time ever on this episode. So this episode made this part a lot easier for me because it really wraps up all of the other information that's out there on this case. But for accuracy's sake, I also found more info on the Grand Junction's Daily Sentinel newspaper and mesacounty.us under their Crime Watch section. So her parole was recently denied again, as has every appeal she's ever entered. But there's some really interesting info out there that this episode didn't cover. So after Alan was murdered, Miriam had a friend she really confided in, and she was using her a lot when she staged these incidents to indicate like she was being stalked. She would call her and tell her that she came home and she found the fridge was open, or random lights were on, or some things were, messed with and tussled with. And then she did one of these when that whole greeting card incident happened, and she called her friend first. Her friend said, "Come over immediately." When she got there, of course, the friend told her to call the police, but Miriam called her lawyer first, and her lawyer told her to call the police, and then she did. And this poor friend, like, she probably felt so bamboozled the whole time. Like, it was always this one friend that she turned to, and I just really felt for her when they were interviewing her. Okay, so after all of that stuff, she said over and over and over again in her interrogations that she had a prenup. She had nothing to gain. She didn't mention that insurance policy. Oh, but wouldn't you know, your girl didn't forget about that insurance policy. She called that policy company. But because she was isolating Alan so much and was so deep in all of her lies, the forged checks, etc., she never paid the payments for the plan, and it got canceled.
Joke's on you, bitch.
Yep, she didn't get any of that money. She did get money from the sale of their house, though, because she got Alan to buy a new house after they got married, because remember, the prenup stated she only gains things
when they got married.
Yeah, from once they got married, anything purchased after that, she's entitled to.
Right.
So she's just growing up a tab of assets, and the moment the heat starts to build up on her and she was close to being caught, she knew she had to act, and she knew she had to eliminate him.
That's crazy.
Now, let's go back to her first husband, because we got no additional context here, and I have some theories. Her first husband's death was classified as a suicide. Her brother was the detective that ruled that it was a suicide, and he's also the one who ruled that he pulled the trigger with his right thumb using his right hand. So her daughter's overdose is a huge mystery as well. And we talked about how, he was the apple of her eye and all these things. I kind of have a theory that she was responsible for this. And I have a theory that Jack may have actually committed suicide, but did it in a way that would traumatize Miriam, because I wonder if he suspected her. That's my theory. It's total speculation. Here, break it down. Her daughter's overdose, mystery. Her husband's suicide, mystery. She steals thousands of dollars from her father, sets his back porch on fire, goes to her mom's, steals from her, gets a job at a dance studio, leaves the dance studio and steals from the dance studio. Then she gets with Alan, steals from Alan, and now his death is a mystery. Bam, second husband dead. There's no mystery.
Yeah,
There's just no mystery.
When you put it that way.
It has to be her. Okay. Then she moves back to Florida because, again, it's Florida and that's where one goes. Taylor Swift even wrote a song about it, so it's a thing. She moves in with her son, and get this horrific shit. She takes on Alan's first wife's whole identity, the whole thing. She becomes her. She stole her license, everything. And this is the wife that actually loved Alan, died suddenly of a heart attack, and left him brokenhearted and vulnerable to then fall into the arms of this sociopath. I don't think we actually talked about that aspect, but yeah, he had lost his wife suddenly. And so he was very heartbroken, and that's he wanted to get back out there and do new things. And that's how he met Miriam, is at this dance class.
At a dance class?
Yeah, and she was the teacher.
Oh my God.
Just so sad. Well, this bitch got a job with his previous wife's identity. She even created a dating profile with her name. And then she even went on a date with a man who we meet in this 2020 episode I'm talking about. And just when you think things couldn't get weirder, it does. She told this man that her husband died of brain cancer and that they all knew it was coming, so that's why she could move on so quickly. They ended up going back to this guy's place, and she wouldn't leave. After a few nights, she starts saying maybe she should move from her son's place to Orlando, where this guy was. And even better, she should just move in. He got super freaked out, as anyone would.
Anyone would, yeah.
He made up some story about plans that he couldn't break just to get her out, just to get her out of there.
Yeah.
And they never spoke again.
Bitch, get out.
And yeah, they found him when they looked up all of her computer activity. And they just pieced it all together. And he is in this 2020 episode. And he is such a sweetheart. I'm pretty sure he owns a dance studio as well. She was targeting that ballroom dance community.
Oh my God, this bitch is crazy.
Uh-huh. Oh, and then, so in this interview on the phone that 2020 has with her, in this interview, she is completely convinced she's innocent. On the interviews, she said Alan actually knew everything, that he knew about the checks. He wanted her to write those checks, that he knew about the loans, that he didn't want to talk to his family, that he knew everything. And then she even puts the car bombing attempt on Alan, and that he did it because he wanted the insurance money.
Okay, and then so how do you explain you running to a gas station for 4 hours with IBS?
I think my favorite scene, though, is when she's coming up with her alibi in the police interrogation video, and she's just pulling receipts out of her pocket. Like, she's just, and that's in the 2020 episode. I don't think it's in the Forensic Files one, is it?
I don't know. I mean, no.
In the interrogation videos in the 2020 episode, they're like, where were you? She's like, oh, Pop, here's this receipt. She's literally pulling her alibi out of her pocket. Like, here's this. It's just like too much.
He is crazy.
Absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. And I do think she knew that area that the car bombing happened, I think she knew there was no cameras, because in the 2020 episode, those cops are interrogated and they say, you know, like, did you ask, like, oh, well, we're going to pull these cameras. What do you think we'll see? Miriam said, well, you'll see the person who hopefully did this. And I'm like, no, you had to have known there was no cameras. Like, I think she did her research.
Did she not do her research when she went to go buy the card?
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean?
I don't think I think she thought she bought an ambiguous enough card.
I don't think so. She made up a lie about having really bad IBS, and then she like purposely like parked her, like made Alan park into like a parking lot. But then, oh, when I'm going to create a ransom note, I'm not going to think about like, oh, I could be seen in these surveillance videos.
Well, she took the barcode out. So she knew that much. They contacted the company and that made the card.
I know, but this is still 2008, where like,
I know
there are surveillance cameras in stores.
But she didn't think they could trace the card. That's the thing. Her ego, her narcissism, whatever, like, that was a mistake she made.
She was definitely really smart by like not licking the card and like,
yeah.
Obviously, but then I still would have been like, it's 2008. Like there's
and that's the thing, is like, that is the only thing that brings me any type of comfort. And when we do older cases, not maybe 2008, but like when we talk about those older ones where there's like serial killers and stuff, I'm like, yeah, it's 2025. There's so much security. Like, you couldn't get away with that nowadays.
No,
like,
literally,
not in the same way.
In that show, I was just watching like Adolescence on Netflix. If you love true crime, just like go watch that. The UK is like top 3 countries in the world that is the most overly protected with surveillance. So like they can create timelines from like every single minute of like walking through different streets. Like, it is wild. And so like in 2025, like, that is obviously completely different than 2008, but still you're walking into like a Walmart and not thinking that you're gonna be seen. But let me make my alibi be that I have to run across a 4-lane highway to go to the bathroom because
she didn't want to be questioned by police. She started getting too nervous. It made her IBS all roll.
Miriam, you need to be an SNL character. Now for our missing persons case that we would like everyone to know about. From the Black and Missing Foundation's website, we have the case of Samaya Martin. She is a 14-year-old girl, and the city that she is missing from is Oakland, California. She was last seen on March 19th, 2025. She is a Black female, medium complexion, 5'8", 185 pounds. Her hair color is brown, her hair length is medium, and her eye color is brown. There was an alert that was sent out because Samaya was last seen on the 500 block of 105th Avenue in Oakland, California. The circumstances of her disappearance are unknown. However, Samaya is at high risk due to her young age and health issues. If you have any information, you're asked to please contact the Oakland Police Department at 510-238-3641 or text all capital letters BAMFI at 1-877-97-BAMFI, or you can visit www.bamfi.org.
We will also post this case information on our Instagram at Forensic Files Podcast, but please first go and follow at Black and Missing FDN and MMI Who Is Missing. Thank you.
Oh my God, we did it. Oh my God, episode
Okey-dokey.
15. 15 more and then we're 30 years old.
Our next episode is season 1, episode 8, and it's called The Wilson Murder. From what I can see, it looks like it's a pretty popular case. I've never heard of it, but it involves twins.
Oh my gosh.
Identical twins.
Okay.
It's a wild ride. So yeah, that's going to be our next episode. If you do like our podcast, please help us spread the word, share on social media, share on Reddit, share everywhere, and drop us a review to tell us what you think.
And if you don't, have a nice day and sashay away.
Until the next one. Bye.
Bye.